Good evening, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about a topic um, that I think is very important, particularly in the rental property manager space, right? Or a landlord tenant space. And that topic is evictions, deadly evictions. I'm going to play a video really quickly. And after go through that video tonight, I want to have a discussion about the right way, in my opinion, to do evictions, the wrong way, in my opinion, to do evictions. And also, one of the things that I want to do is I want people to call in and tell me about their experiences with evictions, whether that's a tenant, whether that's a landlord, what your experience has been with evictions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I'm going to go ahead and play this video as well.
Members of tonight. Members of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office are mourning the death of one of their own. The sheriff there said today Deputy Terry Mashkow was killed while serving an eviction notice in Vero Beach. Another deputy was also hurt. Now, throughout the day, we've seen responses and offers of support come in from law enforcement agencies across Central Florida. Spectrum News 13's Greg Malone, he's joining us live here in Indian River County this evening. And Greg, what are you learning about the deputy that was killed in the line of duty tonight?
She was well beloved by the department, no doubt, Curtis. She had 25 years of experience. She was one of three deputies serving that eviction notice when shots rang out today. Sky 13 over the neighborhood at Vero Beach with a large law enforcement presence below. Three Indian River Sheriff's deputies were giving an eviction notice along with a locksmith. Investigators say shots rang out from inside. 47-year-old Deputy Terry Mascal was shot and killed. Deputy Florentino Alrise was shot in the shoulder, then retreated to the garage. Another deputy wasn't hurt. Locksmith at the scene and the suspect were both shot and are in the hospital.
I'm absolutely heartbroken. I've worked my entire career with Terry, and as have pretty much everybody else at the agency. We don't have a lot of people who have been there. That time, 25 years is a long time.
Taylor Clark lives nearby and heard the commotion. She wanted to express her condolences by bringing flowers to the scene.
Wake up in the morning, you're doing your job. That's what I'm
Sheriff Flowers says they've had 7 calls for service to the home just this month, none before. He says the suspect was recently fired from UPS and made negative social media posts about the company and the Indian River Sheriff's Office.
Almost all of them from the mother calling about him and her decision to ultimately evict him.
And the suspect has been identified as Michael Haberstam. He's listed in critical condition. What we're looking at right now here live is the beginning of a procession that they're going to take the fallen deputy to the medical examiner's office in Fort Pierce. That procession is expected to start here in just a few minutes. But again, a huge gathering of support law enforcement from all across the local areas, the state, and other parts of the country reaching out to the Indian River Sheriff's Office about this tragic day and the loss of a deputy who was so well beloved. We'll show you that procession when it happens in just a little while. Live in Indian River County, Greg Malone, Spectrum News 13.
All right, Greg, we appreciate that live report. Such a difficult time for everyone involved there. In response to the shooting, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey said his office has sent help in the form of deputy sheriffs and supervisors to Indian River County. They spent much of the day helping respond to other calls for service in Indian River County. Now, Sheriff Ivey added, and I quote, "Our hearts go out to Sheriff Flowers, his entire agency, and their entire community." Now, we're going to continue to keep you updated with all the
Yeah, that's truly sad. And when it comes to rental properties, serving eviction notices, and rent collection is probably one of the two, can be two of the most challenging aspects of the business. A lot of people think, rental properties is a no effort business, right? I keep telling people rental properties is not an expense fee business. It's not passive either, particularly when you get in situations where you have to go evict the tenant or do those kind of things. Because the reality of the matter is it can be a contentious situation. Now, this particular issue, like, where mother wants to evict her adult son, doesn't really lend itself to well, it is, right? I mean, so she's evicting her son. I don't know whether he paid rent or not. They didn't say any of that. But the fact is that they were doing an eviction, right? And if he can pull out a gun to shoot when his mom is doing an eviction, I mean, someone that's not your family, they won't have any issues pulling out a gun to shoot either, right? And so and I hear a lot of people when they are, going to do evictions or potentially doing evictions, oh, I just go knock on the door. And I'm like, yeah, great, you can definitely go and do that if you want to. But me, I try to make sure, I believe, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? And so because of that, I try to make sure I follow the rules as closely as possible, to ensure that I'm dotting my I's and I'm crossing my T's. And whenever I do an eviction, I make sure that I have a process server go to serve the tenants. And so I never go out there myself. I don't even argue with tenants because there's no reason for me to argue. If I have all of my policies and procedures in place, there's no reason for me to argue with tenants. There's no reason for me to raise my voice. There's no reason for me to curse or to. There's no reason. There's no reason for it at all. Like get my blood pressure high is no reason to do it, right? If you have all of your policies and your procedures in place, all you have to do is follow your policies and procedures, right? For me, tenant doesn't pay their rent by the 5th. I am filing an eviction on the 6th, and that eviction starts with a 3-day notice to pay or quit. I'm submitting it to the process server, have the process server go out there to serve that notice because they are trained to deal with those situations, right? Once the process server goes out there to serve that notice, then, if the tenant, pays their rent within the allocated time frame within that 3-day notice, the 3-day notice goes away. If they don't pay it within that time frame, then I'm submitting a request to the attorney to file the eviction in the court. Once the attorney files the eviction in the court, if the tenant doesn't respond, then they get a default judgment. If the tenant does respond, then we go back and forth with that, have a hearing scheduled, and all of those different tasks that needs to happen. But I let the attorney handle all of that to let me know where I need to be, what time I need to be there, and I show up if I need to. If not, they get a default judgment. Once the default judgment is entered, then the clerk then the attorney will submit for a writ of possession. Once the attorney submits for that writ of possession, and we'll provide it to the sheriff. The sheriff will go out there. A lot of time, well, all the time, they need someone out there with them. So you go out there with the sheriff. They go knock on the door, and most of the time people leave before you even get there. But in instances where they don't leave and the sheriff has to forcibly remove them, those are the types of things that the sheriff ensures that you're protected to make sure that you don't get shot when you're going to knock on the door to do an eviction. Now, I don't know that this could have been avoided, right? Because you have a sheriff that's gone out there, so presumably the mother has went through the process of getting a writ of possession, right? They went through the court. I mean, they had to have a writ of possession um, for the sheriff to go out there and perform that eviction. And in that process, that sheriff's deputy got shot. She was on a job for 25 years. 25 years. And in her 25th year, she gets shot and she dies because she went to serve an eviction. And she was part of the civil unit, right? Like, you know, so serving an eviction or performing an eviction is a dangerous, dangerous task. And so if you are a landlord, even if you can do it, even if you're a tough guy, and I get that, or we all, have some type of bravery in us sometimes, right? You shouldn't be trying to go out there and be a hero, right? It's a rental property, great, right? Like you want the tenant to leave, great. I'm not raising my blood pressure for anything that doesn't require me to raise my blood pressure. If I have the cards and they're stacked in my favor, I'm going to use the processes and the rules that I have in place to make sure that I get what I need to get accomplished with the minimal amount of aggravation as I possibly can, right? And so I felt very bad for that sheriff's deputy that got shot, right? Like, and I don't know if there's something that they could have done better, something they could have done different. Of course, they couldn't have known that they were walking into a situation where someone had a gun. Maybe, you know, the mother, who processed the eviction, I mean, that is her son, so she might have known that her son had a gun. Maybe she should have, told him, hey, he does have a gun, right? Maybe she should have given him some heads up on their mental state. But for most of the time, when you're going out there to process an eviction, you don't know a person's mental state. I've had an issue with a tenant one time in one of my co-living spaces. When they left, they tore up the room that they were in. Like they broke the window, they slashed the bed, and all this nonsense. And I'm like, all that was not even necessary. But if I would have gone over there to try to evict them a without the sheriff going out there to evict them. First of all, you put yourself in a position where you can end up with a lot of liability. That's the first thing, right? From a business perspective, you own this property, right? If you go and you process an eviction without a writ of possession, you go and you don't follow the necessary rules. Someone could say, "Hey, I had $100,000 worth of whatever in here, and they took it." Like you have no way to prove whatever they had in there was worth or was not worth what they say, right? And they could try to sue you for that, right? They can try to reclaim something they never even had just by saying, "Hey, because you went through the wrong process," right? So for me, it always pays to follow certain steps and certain guidelines because it makes it easier for you as a rental property owner to move people out. And then there's sometimes owners don't do the right things. Like landlords sometimes try to skirt the rules, right? And they do things in a way that is harmful to the tenants, right? And so those things happen just as much on the other end, right? That's why there's a lot of rules that get put in place to protect tenants because sometimes landlords go over the top, right? When they're trying to get rid of tenants, get tenants out. You have some places like in New York where it takes 6 months to a year to get people out, but that's because New York is a very rough town and sometimes landlords get a little rough with the tenants in terms of getting them out. They use shady tactics, right? I don't, listen, I believe in being as fair as you possibly can, right? If someone comes at you wrong, I don't necessarily believe in turning the other cheek, but I don't necessarily believe in business anyway that you come at people sideways, right? So for me, if a tenant's not following the rules, I'm not going to try to do anything outside of the parameters of what's permitted to move things along so that we can get a resolution that's beneficial to the owner that I'm working with, right? And because to me, the tenant's my client too, right? So in this particular situation, I mean, it's a very, very, very sad situation, right? I mean, you have one deputy that died, you have another deputy that got shot, and then you have the poor locksmith. he just went there to change the lock so that when they get him out, he doesn't go back in the house and he catches a bullet. That's crazy. That is crazy. Like, I mean, where was this locksmith in this procession walking into this house that he catches a bullet? That's that is that to me is like what? Like if when I'm walking in with a sheriff into a property, I may unlock the door, but they enter, right? And like I said, I'm not sure where this locksmith was, but the locksmith, well, probably a locksmith unlocked the door, more than likely, right? He's probably there to change the locks, but he probably gained entry into the property. And then after he gained entry into the property, then, well, and that's all speculation because I don't, maybe they had the key. Maybe the mother was there too and she had the key and she let them in. I don't know, right? But for the locksmith to be in the mix at that particular point, for him to be able to catch a bullet, that's, I mean, that's crazy to me, right? And police have different procedures when they're walking through a home to clear it out, but those things are things you got to be very careful of. Now, I have had situations where a sheriff's deputy has gone through a window for me to make sure the property was clear, right? The window was open, it went in, opened it, cleared it out, right? And I appreciate that. Listen, the police play a very important role, right? And the sheriffs and the cops all over, they play a very important role. And that's a dangerous job, right? I mean, you're just going over there to serve an eviction notice and to follow the rules or follow the law that's in front of you. And then, someone, shoots you for that. And, he probably has some other things going on. They say he got fired by UPS. You know, twice, two disasters in 1 week. First, UPS plane goes down. Like, what's going on? And now, after UPS plane goes down, you have this fool gets fired from UPS. I don't know why they even had to say he got fired from UPS. I don't know why that was relevant to the news story. I mean, I guess it's something that happened, so they mentioned it, but maybe that, made him snap, the fact that he got fired from UPS, but geez Louise, it's like, can, can give him a break, like, give UPS I'm talking about, like two tragedies in 1 week. Oof, or was that last week? Either way, man, that's just too close together. You have a whole plane go down, and now you have this fool who used to work for you get fired, and then he comes in and he's getting evicted, and he starts shooting up the spot. I'm like, and he's in critical condition himself, so it's no good for anybody. Yeah, it's no good for anybody, so for me, my point and what I'm trying to say is they're good, they're good and bad on both ends, right? When it comes to um, filing evictions, the good is, the laws are in place. You're getting the owner back their property, or you're able to get the property, get the person out. But then you put yourself in danger when you try to do it yourself, right? So the point I'm trying to get is never try to do it yourself. Never try to do it yourself. You could, you're trying to save money. To me, it's not worth it. Just follow the rules that you have in place. Let the professionals do what they need to do, and let them do what they need to do. And then you follow up, get the locksmith and everything involved to change the locks on the property so that you can then take over the property and start anew. What I want to do tonight, though, is I want to talk to landlords, and I want to talk to tenants who've had terrible issues with evictions, right? Either the landlord didn't do what they needed to do to process the eviction, right? And they kind of went, you know, crazy, right? They did some stupid stuff. Or or the tenant didn't do what they need to do, right? And then you had to forcibly get them removed either through the sheriff or what have you. I've had several different evictions types, different issues with evictions over the years. For the most part, people leave before you even get there. Like before the sheriffs, once the sheriffs put that final notice on the door, they are typically gone before the sheriff even has to forcibly remove them. I've had a couple of instances though where the sheriff actually had to go and watch these people move out, right? I had an issue probably a year ago. I took over a property for an owner. The owner had been trying to get tenants out for 2 years. The tenants didn't pay their rent for about 2 years. And so the tenant owner first tried to do the eviction themselves. But some tenants are savvy, right? And so they have some legal organizations that provide free legal consultation and write free letters for tenants. And so they used one of those services, and they were able um, to block the eviction that the owner was doing. So I got involved, and I was like, I'm not doing none of that myself. So I went and I got a process server, 3-day notice. I follow all the steps that I just told you that I followed, and then we were able to, while we were working to get all the tenants out, these tenants literally waited until the sheriff went, knocked on the door, woke them up for them to move out the property. Before then, they weren't moving. They actually didn't believe that they were getting evicted until the sheriff came and actually took them out. And they went peacefully, right? Like it went peacefully, it was no issues. It was easy, right? Um, I've had other scenario. Well, I really haven't had any scenarios where the tenant didn't leave peacefully. That's the only one that I can actually think of where the tenants actually waited for the sheriff to get there. And then once the sheriff got there, they left, right? They packed all their stuff. It took about an hour and change. Oh no, actually, no, they're not the only one. There was another property that I was managing where they waited till the last minute too, and they were still packing up while the sheriff was, shepherding them out, right? Like, and I like for me, six and one and a half dozen on the other. You want to wait for the sheriff to come put your stuff out, that's fine. And if you don't, and then there was a situation a long time ago, maybe 6, 10 years ago, where I did an eviction and the tenants left, but they left all their stuff in the house. They abandoned the property, right? And so for that particular, because at that point I was in Tennessee. And so what the advice that the attorney gave me at that time is, hey, you have to put all their stuff in storage. Don't just throw it out because of the liabilities that come with just throwing someone's stuff out. And so I had to get all their stuff packed and put in storage. And I put it in storage for like 6 months and then gave them the key for them to go pick it up. And so those are the type of things that you have to be aware of or cognizant of, right? Because you can have situations where you can have situations where people just abandon the property and they leave all their stuff in there, right? In some states, you can put their stuff out on the curb, depending on what the situation is. In other situations, you have to actually put those things in storage. But to me, it's never worth it or worthwhile to go into that contentious situation, knocking on people's doors. The good thing is in the state of Florida recently, they passed a law that allows you to send out notices through email, right? And so it wouldn't help in this situation per se, because after the 3-day notice goes out, after all of that is done, then the next step is the attorney filing the eviction. So, them serving the writ of possession, like doing that by email is not gonna change much, right? Because the whole point of the writ of possession is for the sheriff to actually go out there and forcibly remove the person from the property. And so, best thing you can do is stay back, right? Stay back, wait till the sheriff tells you it's all clear, right? So you can open the door, but after you open the door, stay back, wait for the sheriff to tell you it's all clear. And once the sheriff tells you all clear, then you do what you have to do. But before then, just hang tight. And there've been instances where, the sheriff say, "Hey, wait over there by your car because we don't know what we don't know what to expect when we get into the property." And other than the two times that I told you where there were people who had to actively pack their stuff and leave while the sheriff was watching them go, for the most part, yeah, they don't, people don't, people don't hang around, right? They get their stuff and they leave. But it's unfortunate that this deputy had to lose her life simply because he didn't want to go. He was upset. He had other things happening, so he decided to shoot and kill this deputy. It's super sad, super super sad. And so the moral of the story is evictions can be very very deadly, right? Serving notices of any kind can be super deadly. I'd want to hear from you though, for rental property owners, landlords. I'd want to hear from tenants as well. Have you ever been evicted? What has that been like? And what'd you do? Like how'd you deal with it? How'd you not snap? Right? And as a landlord, have you filed an eviction? Like what was going through your head while you were filing an eviction? What type of issues did you experience filing evictions on a tenant? Luckily for me, I haven't had to do much evictions at all, which is great. But sometimes you have to do it, right? Sometimes you have to do it. You have people who stay in your property longer than they have to. I mean, squatting situations. I mean, there was one time I went into a new property that I just started managing. The property was just rehabbed. And, I walked into the property and there was this lady living there. She just sashaying out the room like like she was living there. Like I was like, what is going on here? And she didn't have this wasn't a tenant. She didn't have a lease or nothing like that, right? So what happened was this particular tenant was living no, this particular property was just rehabbed and it was vacant for a little while. And so the squatter found an open window, went in there. It was in the wintertime, right? So I guess she wanted some heat. And she just stayed in there until I showed up, and then she just sashayed out. So I had to, secure the property, and then, do my thing to get the property rented. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? She just sashayed out the room like nothing wrong. Hey, walked out. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? But those types of things happen, man. Like when you're dealing with properties, you hear things about the sovereign citizens, they take over properties all the time. And that can be problematic and an issue in and of itself. I heard a story the other day where someone started squatting in someone's property, and instead of trying to get them evicted, they just moved in with them and started eating their food and doing. Listen, I don't have time for that, right? Like someone squatting in their property, I'm not going to live there with them. That's not going to happen, right? But people have different mindsets on how to do different things, right? So, but that sounds crazy to me. Like you go into a property that's currently being squatted. Then it's your property. You do own it, and you start living there with them. Like, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. Yeah, so I can't see myself doing nothing like that. That's just not my thing. I just couldn't see myself doing something like that. But like I said, it worked for them. They ended up leaving because they're like, "Oh, I ain't staying here, right? This person's crazier than me, right?" So, so they left. Um, Other stories I have, squatting situations. I mean, yeah, sometimes going into properties, particularly properties that you don't know, you're not familiar with, it can be dangerous, right? Particularly in a state like Florida. People do have guns, right? You have to stand your ground, right? And so. those things can get very, 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 very challenging. That's why it's best to use the rules and the processes that you have in place, use the laws that are in they're on the books because it puts the law on your side. And the more you have the law on your side, the better off you're gonna be, right? And you don't want to, go out there trying to be no vigilante, it's not worth it, right? This is a business, you're trying to make money, right? You're trying to get a residual income, you're trying to do what you have to do, which is great, right? Use the rules, but learn the rules. That's the first thing. Understand the rules, learn the rules. They have plenty of information out there that tells you all the rules. And even when you know the rules, hire a professional, right? Like make sure you hire a professional to do those things, right? I'm not serving any notices. That's not what I do, right? Like I can own the property, I can manage the property, but serving notices is not what I do. I let the process server do that. $50, no big deal, right? I got better things to do with my time. Driving over there, posting it, coming back after I wrote it, like, nah, I'm not doing that. Um, right? Like you want to save $1. Okay. Like use your time wisely, right? Um, yeah, so for me it's not worth it, right? Going there arguing, negotiating. Yeah, like it's like if you have to, you have to. But if you don't stress yourself about it. Just make sure you have the right processes and tools and systems in place, and you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to worry about getting shot, right? When police officers put their lives on the line like that is definitely commendable, right? Like to serve a notice, that's a job she went, she did, and she got shot. That's unfortunate. She shouldn't have to get shot, to serve a writ of possession, right? To evict the tenant out of the property. No one should have to die over that. And so it is what it is though. Um, and you never know what you're going to be walking into, right? You never know. You always have to be prepared. I know contractors who walk around with guns on them because they never know what they're going to run into, and they want to be prepared, right? And this was a chef, so she was trained, and she still got a bullet. Both two chefs got a bullet. One died, the other one didn't. And then the locksmith, he was just there to change the locks and gain entry, and he got shot. I mean, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Um, Yeah, so I mean, you have tenants out there that's not doing the right thing. You have owners out there that are not doing the right thing. But whether you're a tenant or owner, you don't deserve to get shot over a rental property. It's just no one deserves to get shot over rental property. So the moral of the story is, I'm going to repeat it again. Have processes and procedures in place. Follow those processes and procedures. Know the rules, right? Know the laws. Use professionals, right? And as long as you do that, you're going to put yourself in a better position to not be shot, right? That's what it comes down to, right? Every time I've done an eviction, I've always used the attorney, always used the process server, and I've always contacted the sheriff, right? There's a property that I was managing, a co-living space, and there was someone in there just squatting, like, it's in the room, whatever. I called the sheriff. Sheriff came out there because there's a rule in Florida at least where if a squatter's in the property and they can't prove through a lease agreement or some other notarized document that they're entitled to be there, the sheriff will remove them. That's another rule law that was put in place um, by a lot of organizations. I worked on that. BAA, Bay Area Apartment Association, helped with that. NARPM helped with that. And a couple of other organizations helped with that as well. But that was one of the rules that were put in place. And so it's easier to um, get individuals and squatters out of the property, right? That was a great rule that was put in place. And I think the 3-day notice is another great rule. The sending notices through email is bringing the rental property business into the 21st century, right? You don't have to physically post notices. Now, again, this is not legal advice, it's not financial advice, um, and this is not professional advice either. But you understand those rules, how they work and how they apply. Contact your attorney or what have you. You do have to have it as an addendum in a lease. They do have to agree to receive notices as well. It's all opt-in, so they can opt out anytime, right? So all those things are important. You got to make sure that you're following the rules, but it makes it a lot safer for you, right? I mean, if someone owes rent, you go knock on on their door, it may be problematic. Right. I don't accept cash. I don't accept checks. Everything is done electronically. Partly because of my technology background as a cybersecurity consultant, I think is more efficient. But like, I try to remove as much friction as possible in the transaction so things happen as smoothly as possible. Right. Um, so it makes things easier to move through, right? I file my eviction all online, and the only thing I have to do is go there to meet the sheriff to do the writ of possession. It makes things so much easier for me. It makes things 100 times easier for me, and I don't have to worry about it, right? And so, for any time that you are considering doing a 3-day notice, um, anytime you're considering doing an eviction, please be smart. Don't try to do it all yourself. Save time, save energy, and spend the $50 for the process server, right? I have a company that I use, give it a shout out to LetterStream, send out notices through that, right? Go to your attorney, whatever attorney you want to use, right? And they have some affordable attorneys that can help process those evictions for you. And sometimes the challenge is a lot of rental property owners, they just think attorneys are too expensive, but they do have some attorneys that work in the rental property space that are affordable, right? I use a great one, Heiss Weiss and Wolk, right? Shout out to them. I also use Kelly and Grant. They're another good group that I work with. Shout out to them as well. Um, but and I heard this before, and I think it's true. The most dangerous number in any small business is one, right? So you want to make sure you have multiple options or opportunities, or multiple resources or multiple professions to do the same job, right? Because if one can't do it, another one can, right? So make sure you have as many of those as you possibly can. Yeah. So for me, it's about following the processes that you have, not putting yourself in unnecessary risk and danger. This situation right here that happened with this sheriff is very unfortunate. She, her life's on the line every day. All sheriffs, all cops, their lives are on the line every day based on the work that they do. And it's commendable, work that they do. And I'm sorry to hear that she got shot. But you, as a rental property owner, you as a landlord or property manager, you don't have to put yourself in that risky situation, right? There are other avenues, other ways. You have options that you can leverage so that you're not the one standing in harm's way just by doing your job, right? When police officers take the oath of office, they take that oath to protect and serve, but they take that oath to protect and serve, understanding that their jobs put their lives on the line every day, which is why they can be very uncompromising sometimes, right? Sometimes it is necessary, right? Because if you're dealing every day where you're in constant friction, it it molds and it shapes you to be a certain way, right? As you can see, she lost her life doing, serving an eviction. It wasn't even a robbery, right? It wasn't even something where you would think that you should be getting shot over, right? She was just, you don't live here anymore. An eviction was granted by the court, leave, right? But turns out took ended her life, right? So Yeah, like my prayers go out to her and her family, and I can't say that enough. But for the real estate professionals, property managers, and landlords out there, you don't have to put yourself in that position. Um, Evictions can be dangerous. Serving notices can be dangerous because you never know what's happening in a person's mind, and whether they're a tenant or they're a squatter, it's best that you put yourself in a position where it mitigates the risk to you, right? So if I know I'm in a situation where I go to a property and there's a squatter, if I had known that there was something in that property, I probably would just call the sheriff to come clean it out before I go in there, right? I can handle myself. I'm not scared of nothing. Um, but just because you're not scared of anything doesn't mean you want to put your life on a line, right? And let me not say I'm not scared of anything. I think being brave is not the absence of fear. It's being fearful and doing it anyway, right? Like that's what true bravery is, right? And I think anyone who gets into any combat will always have some sense of fear, right? Either fear for themselves or fear for the person that they're engaging with, because that person may get hurt, right? Depending on, you know, your skill sets and what you have going on, right? But there's always some dichotomy there, right? Man against nature, man against man. Um, and just being a decent human being, you're always going to have that. Okay, how do I resolve this issue, right? Do I have to hurt this person to survive, or does this person have to try to hurt me to survive, right? You always want to root for yourself, but you don't want to put yourself in that position unnecessarily ever, right? So we went another episode without having any calls. I really want landlords and tenants to start calling in so that we can have a conversation about these topics, because I really want to hear what you have to say about evictions, about what you're going through when it comes to evictions as a tenant and even as a landlord. There are a couple of sponsors that I would like to thank: PMI, JCM Realty Group, and Buy It, Rent It, Profit Education. I also have a couple of links on there if you want to send some donations through Stripe, Zelle, PayPal. They're available for you to submit donations. Your donations are always welcome. If you find value in the conversations that I have on this channel, please share, like, and subscribe. And if you don't like the conversations that I have on this channel, leave a comment, and also don't like it, dislike it, right? Give it a thumb down if you don't like it, right? Give it a thumbs up if you like it, but if you don't like it, also share that as well. You'll find also on there, I have a link to my book, The Rental Property Investment Zen Master. But if you have any questions about property management or property management services, I have a link on there if you want to get more information about how we do property management services or how we do evictions. If you need any consultation as a tenant about how to avoid evictions, put a meeting, book a call. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about that. As a landlord, if you want more information about how to avoid evictions, book a call. I'd be more than happy to talk to you as a landlord about that. I mean, the reality is, evictions is a necessary part of the business, right? And at some point, you're going to experience that. And if you have to, it's best to do it in a way that keeps you safe, right? So that's all I have for tonight. I've been rambling on for about, 50 minutes now. I would like my shows to be about an hour in length. If you guys have any questions, of course, my information is in the description. Thanks.